I wanted to talk about FX risks. Everybody's interested in the currency, and I thought to pull out a currency rank and just to show you how African currencies have taken a beating. It's been rough for Africa. It's not just Zambia in terms of currency. I think we're coming from an environment where there was COVID, there was everything, there was debt, volatility in commodity prices. What oil is to Angola is what copper is to Zambia. So your price of crude goes up, your exporters are smiling, importers are crying, and it's always interchangeable. But there's been chaos there. So Zambia is showing a depreciation of about 13.98. You can see how it compares to other. I should just bring out some of the factors that really drive our currency. And this time, let's talk about something different. What is the currency telling us? As opposed to delving into the factors that drive depreciation. What's the currency telling us? This currency has been telling us this for a very long time. We import more than we export, number one. Right now, agric season, we're going to be talking about FISP. Inputs have to be distributed. Where is that fertilizer? We have to import it. But what is the currency telling us? If we can start to locally manufacture that fertilizer and meet that demand, we'll be getting pressure off the FX rate. And if we get pressure off the FX rate, we'll be solving a lot of problems, including fuel, because I talked about two variables. So if we can have control over certain variables, then we can start to shift the dial. I know we need FX for fuel, but at the same time, supply has been subdued. Low mining flows. You can see how everything is speaking to each other, how everything interrelates. So it's very urgent for us to address all those mining issues, all those exports that we're talking about, potentially improving manufacturing capability so that our FX base just increases and these currency volatility swings will be a thing of the past. Interest rates. I've shared what the security curve looks like. I have deliberately picked out what the curve was like a year ago when we had this session versus what this curve was like that last Friday when we had a bond auction. Very marginal move. Interest rates have remained sticky upwards. The first move significant happened on Friday when the curve came down. An average of 67.5 basis points. And you can see that 5-year money is still 23.5%, which is pretty much very high. And your 10-year money was just about 26%. I talk about the yield curve because it's a yield curve that any bank will look at when they're looking at the cost of capital. So when your yield curve remains elevated, but part of the reason why the yield curve is elevated is because of fiscal posture. So your fiscal posture is reflected in what your yield curve is. But there are other dynamics. I do not want to expressly blame the government because we are default rated, credit lines closed. The only way the government could contain some of these things was to use the domestic markets for financing. But the good news is that the budget will limit domestic borrowing to 2.5% of GDP, which is a very, very good sign. And this helps with addressing the overcrowding effect. And that money can then find itself within the private sector, and then interest rates can eventually start to come down. Your currency is still trading north of 20, which is a concern, another headache. Rising inflation could lengthen high interest rate era. The MPC communique did state that inflation will remain elevated. The Bank of Zambia is alive to the fact that you've got exogenous and endogenous factors put together that are driving inflation. And what they said was that it will be outside the target band of 6 to 8% up to the first half of 2025.